Gaslighting is a form of abuse that is really sneaky and treacherous because oftentimes the person who is being abused has the sense that there's something wrong with their own memory or their own perception of reality. And they start to doubt themselves, find themselves unable to trust what they know to be true. And that's really dangerous because over time it erodes their ability to trust anything that they know to be true. Hi, I'm Chris Burke. Welcome to Healing from A to Z with Masterful You and KB. Pardon me. If anybody wonders what I look like or sound like 20 minutes after I wake up, this is, here you go. This is it. Yeah, it was an interesting morning. The alarm was going off in silent mode this morning, so there you have it. But I think we all got a good night's sleep, including the dog, so that's important. Gaslighting is an interesting one because there are times when people know they're gaslighting, and there are other times when people don't. The unconscious mind is capable of gaslighting people. It's capable of when it perceives a threat. If the truth of a situation represents a threat, then fight or flight can kick in, which we talk about all the time. Instincts can take over and actually cause a person to deny that something ever happened or to rewrite history in another way. And so it can happen at an unconscious level. Or when the truth of a situation is too big to look at. For example, somebody might say, well, we say that we're free in our country and that we get to make our own rules, but I don't feel involved in making those rules. And somebody can say, don't be ridiculous and start explaining to you how that isn't true, how your own perception isn't true. So they shut down the possibility of having a discussion or considering things. And that's a big example. There are smaller ones where you might say to somebody, I know you don't like this outfit because you said it, makes me look whatever. But I'm wearing it today because of, and the person says, I never said that. I never said I didn't like that. And you know from your memory that happened. Or, something that may have happened in childhood and you go to talk to your parents about it and say, hey, I wanted to talk about this situation that occurred, and you get met with, just resistance, denial. That never happened. Your memory is wrong. So these kinds of situations erode your sense of trust, of reality. Maybe I did remember it incorrectly because, and here's the trick, you in a moment when your memory of reality disagrees with somebody else's proclaimed memory of a situation, you either have to believe in that moment that your understanding or your perception is off, or you have to believe that the other person, either their view of reality is off or they are intentionally manipulating you. And that is not something that we generally want to believe. It can be a very painful thing to believe that somebody is intentionally manipulating us. So we tend to prefer to think, oh, I must have remembered it wrong. But what happens over time is that so many of these things build up that either your self-esteem becomes really low and you start questioning everything that you're perceiving. You start actually defaulting to the other person and asking them, like, what do you think is happening? Because you figure there's no point in perceiving it yourself. You might as well just default and find out their truth. Then you don't have to get into this place of conflict between your reality and theirs. That happens in a lot of situations. It can happen in the home life, obviously. It can also happen at work, where maybe somebody, a coworker or a manager or a boss gets in the way of things moving forward. And then when looking back on it, says, well, you didn't handle that right. When you remember that actually they got involved in a lot of places that set up roadblocks and made it difficult. But if you don't want to go back through all of the, well, there was this and there was that, all of the tit for tatting, then you end up just saying, yeah, okay, that's not how I remember it, but let's move forward. And again, you're in a situation where you're having to make allowances for other people's inability generally to deal with taking responsibility for their behavior. That's really what gaslighting is. People who are unable, and I'm going to underscore the unable because they lack the emotional maturity and self-awareness, or unwilling. And that's, we would talk about the narcissistic personality that knows what it's doing, knows that it's gaslighting, and is just unwilling to take responsibility. And I like to think of unable and unwilling in this situation as being really close. Because the person who is unwilling to take responsibility, if you dig down a little bit deeper, what you find out is that they're unable to take responsibility because their insecurity is so intense. They have so much fear about people finding out the truth of them, and they're so committed to hiding it at all costs for absolute panic and fear that they would be kicked out of, rejected and kicked out of the tribe. And this is old ancestral cell memory. Our instincts are really rooted in, I need to put on a good front, because if I don't, I could get kicked out of my tribe. If I'm not likable or agreeable in my tribe, then I could get kicked out, and then I'm on my own, and the body knows that could be bad news, right? So this desire to be liked and to be seen in a certain light is really hardwired in us. So when people say, and I've seen people self-proclaimed narcissists on video and whatnot, talking about how they knew exactly what they were doing and they did it anyway. And I would say, yeah, sure they did, but they were unable to choose a different path at that time because it felt like literal survival for them. So let's be clear. I'm not condoning, obviously, gaslighting. What I'm saying is, whether we're the person who is trying to, let them off the hook because we don't want to believe that they're intentionally gaslighting us, or we're the person who's gaslighting because we can't take responsibility, both of us are coming from a place of fear in that moment. And we're rewriting the situation so that it's less scary, so that we can keep the situation together and keep moving forward. Okay, so that's obviously not something that we want to do all the time, is it? We want to be more self-aware. So what we're going to do is talk about, how do I change my experience so that I can handle the situation of gaslighting differently, so that I can actually show up in a way that supports me and the other person. We're going to prioritize supporting ourselves, but we're going to support the other person as well, because to attack another person is actually to put yourself in a vulnerable position. So we don't want to do attack. We actually want to cultivate the ability inside to navigate situations, and then to decide on the other end of a situation whether or not that's an experience we want to continue to have in our lives. But we need to be able to get to safety without attacking. So write down 3 times that you've been gaslit that you remember. This might take you a little bit of time, or it might come up really quickly. You're just going to bring those to awareness. And then I'm going to invite you to write down 3 times when you have gaslit someone else, where you felt in a moment that, oh my God, that is what happened, but I can't admit to that right now, right? Maybe somebody called you out in public about, oh, remember the time you blah, 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 and it was too embarrassing. You couldn't own that. So no, that never happened, right? Write down 3 of those. If you can't think of them, if you don't want to think about them at this moment, that's fine. But writing that down, we draw a circle around it and we say, okay, this is currently my experience of gaslighting. This is what comes to mind for me, what comes to your conscious mind. So when you're asking the question, what does gaslighting mean to me? Your unconscious mind is delivering, hey, it's this and it's that. We look at both sides of it because we really want to be balanced. We want to stay out of the really tempting situation of feeling like victims. And the reason for that is if I'm always being gaslit and I'm never gaslighting somebody else, then I would paint myself in a victim position, but then it would seem as if I'm defenseless or powerless, right? And so it's really important that we understand whatever it is that we see in other people. The gaslighting is just popping in from the unconscious mind at this moment. The gaslighting can also be us gaslighting ourselves, right? So when somebody says to you, no, this never happened, and you say maybe they're right, that's a form of gaslighting ourselves. Thank you. Inspiration, intuition, that was very helpful. So think of 3 times. If you can't think of 3 times when you gaslit someone else, think of 3 times that you gaslit yourself by agreeing with somebody who was gaslighting you. Okay, now we've got this circle around this, and we're saying this is my starting point. So now we're going to find out where we are on a scale of 1 to 10. So with 1 being, this gaslighting situation is so bad I can barely get out of bed in the morning. And 10 being, I'm moving along confidently, knowing that everything is working just as it should. Where are you in your experience right now? This is an intuitive exercise, so whatever number comes to mind, write that down. Okay, this is your starting place. Now we're going to interview this starting experience. So we're going to say, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you saying and doing to yourself and others? What are you sensing in your body? So when you take your awareness and travel your body, where do you notice any tension, any resistance? A lot of times people have a clenched jaw or a tight stomach, might be racing in your heart a little bit of anxiety. Your toes could be clenched. Notice that. Write it all down. And then finally, what do you know? So when you are at that level experience, what do you know is true about yourself in this situation? Take your time, pause the video if you need to. And then we're going to set our destination. So what you've said is, currently I'm having this number experience and this is what it's like. You're describing it to yourself. You're bringing it to conscious awareness, all of the levels of energy that are informing you about what's happening and whether or not that's a good experience for you, something that you choose. So now we're going to go and say, I am going to have what experience, and you're going to choose a number, a higher number, and you'll move toward that number. You can always increase the number over time. Make it feel like something that's achievable. I often recommend a 7 or 8 because as we move forward in improving our experience, especially if we were under a number 5, which most of us are in the beginning when we start working on a particular topic, if we're under a 5, then a 10 might seem, like, oh, it's an improvement, but we don't understand, like, it's a completely different experience. So as you move along and your experience starts to change and you start to feel more confident and comfortable in your skin and know that you're able to navigate whatever comes up, and it doesn't feel personal anymore, then the 10 starts moving further and further away because there's no limit to how incredible the experience can be for you. Okay, so you've chosen your destination. So now as you're going about this process, you're going to be able to say, okay, I started at whatever number, I'm going to whatever number. And you can ask yourself where you are today, where you are in the moment, and that will tell you about the progress being made. But let's paint a nice picture for ourselves and paint it in our conscious mind, and then we're going to plant it into our subconscious so that it can begin working on delivering that experience, the desired experience. Okay, so when you are at this desired number, what will you be thinking? What thoughts will you be having? What will you be feeling? What will you be saying and doing to yourself and others? What will you be sensing in your body? And finally, what will you know to be true? So this is using your imagination, which is a very powerful tool for setting new experiences, for getting us out of the habit of living in the past experiences, of kind of forecasting what happened in the past into the future as if that's the only thing that could happen, is what's already been happening, right? This is a way of actually imagining a new path forward. Great. Now that you have this set, now we're going to ask the question that starts to move us along. What do I need to know or do to move toward my desired experience? And there's going to be a lot of answers over time as you move along in this process. This process could take you a couple of days. It could take you a couple of weeks. It could take you a couple of years, depending on how much is connected, how much is under there in the unconscious patterns that cause you to kind of navigate gaslighting in a way that's causing it to keep going, that's perpetuating it. But it's important to remember in this process that you are not your experiences. So what we're learning as we interview an experience at a particular level, that is your experience at this level of being. But as you move along and you change your experience, it's still you. You're just having a better experience now. We've learned to identify with our past, with situations that happened to us, with the way people treated us. But none of that was ever us. They were just experiences. And as we learn to take the gifts, the wisdom, the lessons from those experiences and to choose a different experience for ourselves and learn how to have that, we can free ourselves from the stories of who we think we used to be. After you've asked yourself the question, what do I need to know or do to travel along on this journey? You're now submitting, using your conscious mind to do what I call the magic toaster, to use the magic toaster, where you submit the question and you wait for the answer to come. And the answer can come through any of the levels of awareness that we've been looking at and talking about. It can pop into your mind as a thought. It can be an emotional feeling. It can be something that you say or do, or something someone else says or does. It can come through body sensations, and it can also come from knowing, from intuitive or inspired kind of, hits or bings. We think about when, you can't remember where your keys are, or you can't remember somebody's name, and you say, oh, it's not coming, because you're actively thinking with your conscious mind at that moment. Your conscious mind and your unconscious mind work together, sort of like breathe in, breathe out, right? If you're breathing, you can't breathe in and breathe out at the same time. They have to work together, those processes. It's similar with your mind. So when your conscious mind is actively thinking, it's like it's actively breathing out. You can't breathe in and get the wisdom of your unconscious mind until your mind rests, until your conscious mind takes a rest. That's why oftentimes when you're in the shower or driving the car or other places where we tend to kind of tune out, the answers to things that we've been trying to think about will pop into our minds, because our mind is resting enough. Our conscious mind is resting enough so the unconscious mind can deliver the answers, which is its job. So please have fun with this. Explore all of the different ways that you can be led along on this journey. And like I said, we are here at Masterful You to help you with that process. A lot of the things that I said in this video today, 18 years ago, I would have had no way of understanding or believing. And life has taught me, experience has taught me that there's a lot more here. than, than we were led to believe. So give yourself the opportunity to find out how brilliant you are and to use that brilliance to create a better life for yourself and a better world for all of us. So please check out masterfulyou.com. For other support, Judy Forder, my dear friend and colleague, and I do a Q&A live on YouTube every Friday. You'll find the link to that session below, or the recording. It will, at some point after Friday, it will be a recording, and you can watch that as we dig a little bit deeper. Judy asks great questions, and we get our audience to ask questions, and we'll dig into gaslighting a little bit deeper. So if you have any questions or concerns or thoughts you want to share, please do in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this little journey into getting to know yourself and your magnificence, then please like, share, and subscribe. The more people we reach, the better our world becomes. And it's going to take all of us rowing in the same direction. Thank you for being here today and spending your precious time with me. And thank you for being you.